November 23, 1944. Reyna-Hopston Airfield, Germany. The captured Mustang stood inside the hangar like a champion put in the wrong ring. Its olive drab coating marked by flak damage, yet its spirit strangely untouched. Senior engineer Wilhelm Hartmann walked around the American fighter for the third time that morning, running his hand along the smooth aluminum exterior, trying to figure out how this aircraft had taken down so many of their most skilled pilots. The serial number remained visible beneath the quickly painted Balkan cross. 441,733, shot down 2 weeks earlier near Munster when its engine failed at 20,000 feet. The pilot managed to glide it down, crash landing on its belly in a turnip field before the Wehrmacht captured him at gunpoint. Now, Hartmann had direct orders from Berlin to discover what made this aircraft so deadly. The mechanics from Munich had arrived before sunrise. 12 of Germany's top aviation experts packed into the freezing hangar with measuring tapes, calipers, notebooks, and slide rules. They had already studied captured Thunderbolts and Lightnings, even a few early Mustang models. But this was a D model, the latest version that had been showing up in increasing numbers over the Reich since June. The one that was turning their veteran pilots into mere statistics. Hartmann watched as Klaus Weber, the armament specialist from Messerschmitt, opened the gun bay doors and let out a quiet whistle. 6 Browning M2 machine guns lay inside the wings like coiled snakes, 3 on each side, their barrels aligned to meet at a point 400 yards in front of the aircraft. 12.7 millimeters, Weber murmured, converting the American .50 caliber in his mind. Same as our MG 131, but look at this. He pointed at the ammunition feeding system, the long metallic belts disappearing deep into the wings. 400 rounds for the inboard guns, 270 for the middle and outer ones. He stopped calculating. 1,880 rounds total. Mein Gott. A young mechanic from Dresden, just 19 and fresh from technical school, leaned closer. His name was Ernst Muller, and he remembered when his brother's Bf 109 returned with half its tail ripped off by American .50 caliber bullets. But our fighters use cannons 20 millimeters, 30 millimeters. Surely those are more powerful than machine guns? Hartmann was already shaking his head. He had flown 109s himself before the injury that grounded him, when they turned him from a pilot into an engineer. Come here, son. Let me show you something. He led the group to a table where ammunition samples were arranged. German 20 millimeter shells beside American .50 caliber rounds. Yes, our cannon shells are larger, more explosive. One solid hit can destroy a bomber's engine. But look at the rate of fire. Our MG 151 fires around 700 rounds per minute. These Brownings? Each one fires 800 rounds per minute. 6 guns firing together? That's 4,800. Rounds per minute, 80 rounds per second all. Aimed at one point. The brutal logic of destruction seemed to freeze in the cold hangar. Air. Muller picked up one of the .50 caliber. Rounds dash armor dash piercing incendiary, its tip painted blue and silver. It felt surprisingly heavy and solid. I still don't get it. It's just a machine gun bullet. Just a bullet that travels at 2,800 feet per second. Weber corrected, hitting with 13,000 foot-pounds of energy. When 6 of them strike the same spot within a tenth of a second? His voice faded, recalling the reports from pilots who survived Mustang encounters. Few had? Hartmann stepped into the cockpit, climbing onto the wing. The bubble canopy was groundbreaking, giving the American pilot full 360-degree visibility. No blind spots like in our fighters. He sat in the seat, gripping the control stick with the gun trigger clearly positioned. The K-14 gun sight was unlike anything in their aircraft. computing sight that automatically calculated LID using distance and target wingspan. The pilot simply framed the target, adjusted the dial for range, and the sight solved the deflection shooting. "Look at this," he called down. "The gun convergence is set at 400 yards, but it's adjustable. The pilot can change it based on preference or mission. And here, he can fire just the inboard guns for long range, all 6 for medium range, or select pairs. It's not only about firepower, it's about precise control of that power." Dr. Friedrich Bauer from the Reich Aviation Ministry had remained silent until now, writing in his leather journal. He had been considering reports that had crossed his desk for months, German fighters breaking apart under American gunfire. Not exploding like with cannon hits, but being shredded as if struck by a massive chainsaw. "We've been thinking about this wrong," he said quietly. "We believe our cannons are superior because one shell can destroy. But the Americans aren't aiming for a perfect single shot. They create a continuous stream of destruction, a flood of bullets that rips through anything ahead of it." The hangar doors creaked open, letting in a blast of icy November air. Hauptmann Erich Zimmermann, one of the few pilots to fight Mustangs and survive, stepped inside. His left arm was still in a sling from his encounter 6 weeks ago. He walked straight up to the Mustang, placing his good hand on its engine cowling like touching a dangerous beast. "You're wasting your time with measurements," he said. "I can tell you exactly what those guns do." October 7th, near Hanover. I was flying top cover on a bomber escort mission. I spotted 4 Mustangs climbing in from the west. We held the altitude advantage perfect position. I dived on the last American in formation, got a flawless cannon shot lined up when his wingman rolled and opened fire. Just a half-second burst, maybe 40 rounds, but everyone struck my right wing root. Not scattered hits, a focused stream that sliced through the main spar like a cutting tool. The wing tore off at 400 miles per hour. I barely escaped in time. He walked along the Mustang's wing, brushing his fingers over the gun ports. Our pilots trained for precision, one perfect cannon shot. The Americans trained for accuracy and quantity together. They direct a cone of bullets exactly where they want it and hold it there until what they're aiming at no longer exists. Against our fighters' light frames and inline engines, it's devastating. Weber had already removed one of the Brownings from its mount with surprising ease. The gun seemed efficient in design, a John Browning creation from the First World War, improved over decades. 80 pounds each, he noted. But look at the engineering. No unnecessary complexity, pure mechanical reliability. Our MG-131 weighs nearly the same but fires slower. And these barrels, they're built to withstand long firing without overheating. The young mechanic from Dresden studied the ammunition belts more closely. "Look at the sequence," he said suddenly. "It's pattern tracer, armor-piercing incendiary, armor-piercing tracer. Every 5th round shows the pilot his impact point. The armor-piercing cuts through our aircraft skin and engine blocks. The incendiary ignites fuel." Hartmann stepped down from the cockpit, his thoughts racing as the implications formed. The American philosophy was entirely different from German doctrine. Instead of designing the ultimate weapon, they took a good weapon, multiplied it, synchronized it, and made it function as a unit. It was factory-style thinking adapted to air warfare. He pictured Detroit and Buffalo factories producing Mustangs by the thousands, each one fitted with 6 Brownings. Each Browning capable of firing 27,000 rounds before needing major servicing. "There's more," Dr. Bauer said, flipping through a captured technical manual found on board. "Their harmonization setting. The rounds don't converge just to a single point. They form an oval pattern about 3 by 6 feet at range. Any fighter caught inside that zone gets hit from multiple angles at once. They aren't trying to put all the rounds through one spot, They create a field of destruction that ensures multiple critical strikes. The hangar air seemed even colder now, their breath visible as fog. Hartmann moved to a blackboard and began drawing figures. Tactically consider this: ABF 109 spots a bomber group and begins the attack. Mustang escorts engage. Our pilot has maybe 3 seconds in a head-on pass. Enough for 30 or 40 cannon rounds if everything goes perfectly. The American also has 3 seconds, but fires around 240.50 caliber rounds in that window. Even if only half hit, that's 120 impacts. Kinetic force alone, Weber added, quickly calculating on his slide rule. 120 hits, each with 13,000 foot-pounds of energy, that's over 1.5 million foot-pounds of destructive force in 3 seconds. Like being struck by a freight train. Young Muller now stood by the Mustang's tail, inspecting the control surfaces. But surely our fighters are more agile. Can't we just outmaneuver them? Zimmerman let out a harsh laugh. Outfly a Mustang? Maybe at low level if luck is on your side. But up at 25,000 feet, where the bombers fly? The Mustang dominates that altitude. And with that bubble canopy, they spot you from anywhere. You can't ambush them like we used to against Thunderbolts. They see everything. The inspection continued through the morning, each finding adding to their realization. The Mustang wasn't only about its guns, it was a fully optimized system. The laminar flow wings that gave incredible speed and endurance. The Packard-built Merlin engine, a use-built copy of the British Rolls-Royce, but made with American precision. The drop tanks that let it escort bombers all the way to Berlin and back. Everything worked in unison to form not just a fighter but a long-range air superiority platform capable of delivering those 6.50 calibers anywhere over the Reich. Dr. Bauer was examining the gun camera setup. They record every engagement, he observed, not only for victory proof but for training. They study every burst, every strike, every miss. They're turning aerial combat into a scientific process. Hartmann thought of his brother, shot down 3 months ago over Frankfurt. The report said his 109 had been hit by Mustangs from the 357th Fighter Group. Several witnesses described the Messerschmitt suddenly shedding debris, breaking apart, then exploding all in barely 2 seconds. His brother never even got a chance to bail out. We have to reconsider our whole strategy, Hartmann said at last. More armor won't help. Those .50 caliber armor-piercing rounds will penetrate anything we can add without grounding the aircraft. Heavier weapons won't help. We already use cannon. Stronger engines won't help. We're already at our engineering limits. He paused, looking at the captured Mustang with something close to admiration. They've found the ideal balance: firepower, range, speed, and production quantity. And they can manufacture them faster than we can destroy them. The Reich Aviation Ministry had been pushing for new miracle weapons, jets, rockets, flying wings. But standing in that cold hangar, examining this single captured Mustang, Hartmann finally understood the truth. The air war wasn't being lost because of worse technology. It was being lost because the Americans were using good technology better. They hadn't created a flawless gun. They had built a very good one, mounted 6 of them on a very good aircraft, and trained their pilots to use them with ruthless effectiveness. Weber returned from the ammunition storage area, counting rounds. You know what's truly terrifying? This is only one aircraft. They're producing Mustangs at a rate of 15 per day. That means 15 fighters, 90 Browning .50 calibers, and 28,000 rounds of ammo every single day. The young mechanic from Dresden had stayed silent for some time, taking in all the information. Finally, he spoke. So when our pilots report that American fighters are tearing our aircraft apart, they aren't exaggerating. They're literally cutting them to pieces with focused machine gun fire. Worse than that, Zimmerman added. They do it from distances where our cannons can't even reach. Those 50s stay accurate out to 800 yards. Our MG-151 starts losing power past 400. They're killing us before we even get close enough to fight. By noon, the technical team had filled 3 entire notebooks with measurements and observations. They photographed every component, traced every system, recorded every exact detail. But one basic question remained unanswered, or rather, the answer was so simple it felt unacceptable. How did 6.50 caliber machine guns destroy German fighters? Through volume, speed, and precision. Through American mass production, ensuring identical quality in every Mustang. Through pilot training, teaching them to put rounds on target instead of hoping for one lucky shot. Hartmann stepped outside the hangar and looked up at the contrails high above. Another formation of B-17s heading east, Mustang escorts weaving defense around them. From 25,000 feet, those 650s could reach down and destroy any German fighter that rose to engage. The numbers were undeniable. Each Mustang, 1,880 rounds, a squadron, 16 aircraft, 30,000 rounds, a fighter group, 50 aircraft, 94,000 rounds, all .50 caliber. Armor-piercing and incendiary, all fired with mechanical accuracy. That evening, Hartmann's technical report would be objective, focused on specifications and performance. But the true conclusion was simpler and far more disturbing. The Americans had learned to mass produce death and deliver it at 3,000 feet per second. They weren't chasing perfection. They were building effective weapons in overwhelming numbers and teaching farm boys from Kansas and mechanics from Detroit to use them with fatal precision. 3 days later, the captured Mustang was loaded onto a rail car headed for the test facility at Rechlin. Hartmann watched it depart, knowing that dozens more were crossing the English Channel that very morning, their wings heavy with fuel and ammunition. Their pilots scanning the skies for German aircraft to tear apart with those 6 deadly 50s. In his pocket was a letter from a pilot on the front lines, serving with JG-26. It contained just one line: "When we see the Mustangs, we run." There is no shame anymore, only survival. The winter of 1944 was settling over Germany. But Hartmann knew the true cold was coming from the west, carried in the aluminum bellies of American bombers and the wings of their escorts. 6 50 caliber machine guns per Mustang. 1,880 rounds. All of it meant for German aircraft, and the young men flying them. The mathematics of air combat had changed, forever written in bullets. Measured in bodies. As December arrived with snow and shorter daylight, the Luftwaffe changed tactics. They formed specialized anti-bomber groups that avoided Mustangs entirely, attacking only when the Americans were turning for home, low on fuel and ammunition. But even these were temporary measures against a permanent reality. The Mustangs kept coming more every month, their pilots improving, their tactics evolving. What once seemed like a crude approach to dogfighting had become the hallmark of American air warfare. Not refined, not high-tech, just brutally effective. Hartmann was reassigned to jet development, working on the Me-262 that Hitler believed would shift the war's outcome. But even while designing this revolutionary aircraft, he knew the truth. Jets might fly faster, but they still had to land. They still needed fuel that Germany no longer had. They still required pilots, now scarce and nearly impossible to train with constant Allied bombings. And when they did take off, when they entered combat, those 650s were waiting, saturating the air with lead to find that one critical hit that would send the miracle weapon crashing to earth in flames. The captured Mustang at Rechlin soon became something of a legend among test pilots. They flew it, studied it, learned from it, but learning and countering are not the same. You could fully understand how 6.50 caliber guns operated and still be destroyed by them. Knowledge doesn't stop bullets traveling at 2,800 feet per second. Understanding convergence patterns is useless when caught inside one. When your aircraft breaks apart around you in a storm of impacts that sounded like hammers striking steel until the sound stopped, not because the guns did, but because there was no more steel left. No more aircraft, only fragments falling from the sky. By February 1945, Hartmann was in Berlin, observing the steady streams of bombers from inside the reinforced concrete of the Zoo Flak Tower. The Mustangs appeared as tiny silver dots, weaving through the bomber formations, sometimes diving toward unseen targets below. He knew exactly what happened in those divey 6.50 caliber guns speaking together. Another German fighter erased from the sky. Another pilot either dead or descending by parachute into a Germany with fewer safe places to land. The technical advantage the Luftwaffe had enjoyed back in 1940 was now just history. The revolutionary jet fighters were too few and too late. The air war had been decided by a brutally simple formula: 6 machine guns times thousands of aircraft equals air superiority. The final entry in Hartmann's technical journal discovered after the war said it clearly. The Americans understood what we failed to grasp. In modern warfare, perfection is the enemy of good enough. While we chased the perfect weapon, they built thousands of good weapons and taught their young men to use them with terrifying efficiency. The Mustang 650s are not elegant, but elegance doesn't win wars. Mass-produced lethality does. By spring 1945, the end was unmistakable. American fighters flew freely over Germany, their 6-gun batteries silent only because there was nothing left to target. The Luftwaffe, once rulers of Europe's skies, had been reduced to hiding aircraft under trees and sending barely trained boys on suicide missions. The Mustangs had done their work with industrial precision, their 50s turning Germany's best aviators and aircraft into aluminum wreckage scattered across the Reich dot in May. With Germany shattered and the war in Europe over, American technical teams arrived at Rechlin to reclaim captured aircraft. They found the Mustang Hartmann had studied still wearing its German markings, still mechanically perfect after months of tests. The lieutenant inspecting it was 23 years old, from Ohio, a former Mustang pilot with the 352nd Fighter Group. He ran his hand over the gun ports. Just as Hartmann had 6 months before. 650s, he said to his crew chief. Nothing fancy, nothing complex. Just 6 good guns that shoot straight. That's all it took. The crew chief, older, maintaining Mustangs since 1943, nodded. He had watched them return from missions with damage that should have destroyed them. Had loaded millions of rounds into their wings. That and boys willing to fly them into hell. He replied, they flew the Mustang back to England that week. The American pilot was amused to fly a Mustang still marked with German insignia over the same land he'd fought above months before. Below lay a broken Germany, cities in ruins, aircraft factories flattened or seized. The autobahns once used to move troops now carried refugees. Fields that once grew food were cratered by bombs and littered with wrecked aircraft, mostly German, but some American too. Because even 650s couldn't guarantee survival in the brutal math of aerial warfare. Years later, historians studying the air war in Europe would focus on strategic bombing, the 1,000-plane raids, the destruction of German industry. But the pilots who were there, German and American, knew the truth. The war was decided in those seconds when a Mustang pilot pressed the trigger, and 6 streams of .50 caliber bullets covered on the exact point where a German aircraft existed. No mystery, no magic, just mechanical efficiency, multiplied by thousands of aircraft and tens of thousands of young men trained to apply it. With deadly precision, Hartmann survived the war. He later worked for the Americans during the occupation, helping them understand German aircraft engineering. In 1950, he emigrated to the United States and took a job with North American Aviation, the company that had built the Mustang. On his first day, they guided him through the factory floor, showing him the production lines now assembling F-86 Sabres for the Korean War. He paused at the weapon installation area, watching technicians fit 6.50 caliber machine guns into the nose of a Sabre. Still 650s? He asked. The American engineer shrugged. They work. Why change? And in that moment, Hartmann finally understood the answer he had been searching for since that cold morning in 1944. The 650s worked. They were reliable, easy to produce, simple to maintain, and deadly. While German engineers chased perfection, American engineers pursued effectiveness. The results were written across Europe's skies: 28,000 Luftwaffe aircraft destroyed and air superiority so complete that by war's end, Allied pilots were complaining they could no longer find targets. The last Luftwaffe pilot Hartmann interviewed in 1962 was a former major who had survived 47 missions against American bombers. When asked about the Mustang's armament, he stayed silent for a moment, then said, "We called them meat grinders, that's what they were. They turned us into meat. Not with finesse, not with superior technology, but with volume and accuracy. 6.50 seconds. Firing together didn't leave much to bury." The Mustang would go on to fight in Korea its 6.50 calibers, proving just as effective against MiGs and ground forces. By the time it was finally retired from active service, the aircraft and its 6 Browning machine guns had become legend for those who faced them over. Germany in 1944 and 1945, they were never legends. They were simply death, delivered at 2,800 feet per second, repeated 1,880 times per aircraft, multiplied by thousands of aircraft, resulting in the destruction of the Luftwaffe and the collapse of German air power. Today, restored Mustangs fly in air shows, their polished aluminum shining in the sun, their 650s silent and sealed. The crowds admire their elegant design, their strong engines, their bubble cockpits, but few consider what those 6 harmless-looking ports in the wings once represented. Each one could deliver 800 rounds per minute, and together they secured victory one burst at a time, one German fighter at a time until no more German fighters remained to shoot down. The technical data is now openly available to anyone with an internet connection. 6 Browning M2.50 caliber. Machine guns 400 rounds for the inboard. Guns 270 rounds for the Chidias for the middle and outer guns. Muzzle speed 2,800 feet per second. Rate of fire 800 rounds per minute per gun. Convergence 400 yards. Simple figures that do not reveal the true reality behind them. ABF 109's wing ripping away from its fuselage and FW 190 breaking into fragments. A jet-powered Me-262 spiraling to the ground with its engines torn apart by armor-piercing incendiary fire. Wilhelm Hartmann died in 1987 in California after spending the final 40 years of his life in the nation that had defeated his. His son later discovered his wartime notebooks, including the analysis of the captured Mustang. The final sentence of his technical report, written in December 1944, proved prophetic. The Americans have not built a better gun. They have built a better system for delivering bullets to targets in war. This is the only innovation that matters. The Mustang Hartmann examined was eventually returned to the United States, restored, and now rests in a museum in Ohio. A small plaque mentions its capture and German evaluation, but does not mention Hartmann or his team's desperate effort to understand how such a simple weapon system could be so devastating. Visitors walk past, admiring the aircraft's shape, sometimes asking about the guns. The museum guide answers with the standard description: 6.50 caliber machine guns, very effective. He does not explain that those 6 guns transformed aerial combat, demonstrated that properly applied quantity can overcome quality, and turned the skies over Europe into a firing range where German pilots became the targets. Perhaps this omission is appropriate. The 650s were never about glory or elegance or superior technology. They were about putting steel on target repeatedly and accurately until the target no longer existed. They were tools, nothing more, nothing less, used by young men who wanted only to finish their missions and return home. That most of them did return, while their German adversaries did not, proved the effectiveness of those tools. The final word belongs to an unnamed German pilot who wrote home in March 1945. They do not fight with honor or skill. They fight with mathematics. 6 guns, 1,800 rounds, 1 target. We are not defeated by better pilots. We are defeated by American multiplication tables delivered at the speed of sound. That was the truth of the 650s, not a miracle weapon, not a technological breakthrough, just a practical solution multiplied by American industrial capacity and used with mechanical accuracy. They turned the Luftwaffe from hunters into hunted, from predators into prey, from an air force into a memory. 6.50 caliber machine guns mounted in the wings of a North American P-51 Mustang, firing in convergence at 400 yards. Simple, effective, deadly. The American style of warfare written in bullets across the sky. Thanks for joining us on this journey through one of history's remarkable survival accounts. If you found it powerful, consider giving it a like and share it with someone who values these stories of resilience. And don't forget to subscribe for